The following account is real. Names have been changed to protect the living and the innocent. This journal contains language and content that may not be suitable for all listeners.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you listened to part 1 of Steppin' in It. If you didn't, I recommend you do so before listening to this episode. For context, this story takes place approximately 3 months after part 1. In full transparency, I've written 2 different 8 or 9 page intros for this chapter, and they all just take away from the episode. So we're just gonna jump right back in. This episode isn't all blood, guts, and gore like some of the previous episodes, so I understand if it's not for everybody. But this is an important story in my misguided and irresponsible youth working at the funeral home. Anyway, with all that being said, I really hope you enjoy this episode. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. Chapter 21, Steppin' in It, Part 2. Friday. I wake up on the couch in my living room, drenched in sweat and completely out of breath. When did I fall asleep, and why is it so dark? I sit up quickly and squint to look at the analog clock with glowing hands on the wall near the wet bar. 7:15? Are you kidding me? This was my last weekday of vacation, and I spent it in fucking dreamland on my couch. Great. But why am I so tired? I hunch down to stretch my lower back and rub the base of my palms into my eyeballs, feeling the sweat from my forehead transfer to my fingers. Ugh, my entire body's damp, and I've got such a bad headache. Maybe I'm getting the flu again. I touch the back of my hand to my forehead. It's hot. Oh no. I had the flu in August, and in terms of flus I've had in my short lifetime, it was the worst. It lasted over 2 weeks, and for the duration I couldn't keep anything down and was constantly fluctuating temperatures while my body ached worse than it ever had from any past illnesses. I thought it was food poisoning from China Star down the street, but when I didn't feel better in 48 hours, I knew it was something else. Let me tell you, there's nothing worse than having the flu and working at a funeral home just short-staffed enough that calling in sick isn't an option. Everyone ends up bringing whatever they have with them and spreading the sick throughout the office, taking us each down one by one. At some point every year, we're all sick to varying degrees. Some are getting over it, while others find themselves barely surviving. But the phone doesn't stop ringing, because death has no sympathy for the sick. Honestly, doing the grunty, labor-intensive part of the job isn't all that bad when you're sick. Most of the time, when facing a death call or embalming in that condition, the hours go by pretty quick and you forget how bad you feel because you have a job to do. Dealing with people, paperwork, scheduling, and expectations is a whole other story though. Note, never admit to a family you're serving that you're sick. There's really no point in telling them. What are you expecting? Compassion? For you? Please. Someone they love just died. They really don't care about your problems. Admitting you're sick and subsequently distracted by your illness isn't reassuring for a family planning a service. It's like you're making excuses for mistakes that haven't happened yet because of your diminished physical and mental capacity. A family's only focus should be on grieving their loss, not worrying about the details you're undoubtedly missing reveling in your illness. Regardless of how you feel, arrangements and execution of said arrangements must be perfect, always. My dad wouldn't have it any other way. It's our job to turn one of life's worst experiences into a positive memory that families can live with forever. Working a funeral service sick feels a lot like what I imagine being sick on Broadway must be like, in the sense that folks paid a lot of money for you to do what you do, so the show must go on. If I'm being 100% honest, dealing with the living is much more of a pain in the ass than the dead when you're sick as a dog. There's literally nothing worse than having to work a visitation with a fever that makes you forget who you are and what you're doing every 5 minutes, while still having to feign interest and compassion for the hordes of grieving people walking into your building. So you just have to smile and pretend you don't feel like shit. You'd be surprised how a good or bad greeting during a visitation can shape a person's entire visit to the funeral home. A good greeting can put visitors at ease, making the funeral home feel warmer and less spooky, while a cold and unwelcoming greeting will only re-solidify whatever stigma or stereotype the visitor has about funeral directors and the industry at large. Now, with that being said, friendliness and caring compassion can be hard to fake when you're exploding out of both ends of your body. Most of the time, if I'm not feeling well during a visitation without my father present, I'll abandon my post and lay on one of the couches upstairs for 10 or 20 minutes until I'm feeling a little bit more like my healthy self. But I need to be careful because it is possible to accidentally sleep through an entire visitation. Trust me, I've been there. None of my coworkers have ever made a comment on my absence at the door in these situations, as they're usually considerably empathetic for my plight. But don't tell my dad. He wouldn't be happy to hear that I go AWOL at work. He has little patience for weakness during illness, as he's worked through every cold and flu season for 40 years without taking a single sick day. Or at least that's what he tells his staff. Plus, he's constantly lecturing me on the importance of customer service in our industry, saying things like, "You're the face of the funeral home. Most people don't want to be here, and it's your job to make sure they feel welcomed and are put at ease before uncomfortably walking into a room with their dead family member or friend." He's not wrong, but he doesn't need to tell me so often. I've been here 10 years. I should know this by now. This year, Ned and I got sick at the same time, and it was awful. We had 8 or 9 house calls that week, and we were both barely able to stand by the end of it. I'll never forget the night I picked up Mrs. Wilson from the hospital morgue and stayed to assist Ned to speed up the embalming process, and it ended up turning into a 6-hour ordeal. This was mostly because of Mrs. Wilson's shitty circulation, but our inability to complete the simplest task without stopping to rush to the bathroom to expel our insides made for a more complicated evening. We ended up having to do a 6-point injection that night, and I'm pretty sure Ned had to throw out his underwear when he got home. I mean, I know I did. Running my fingers through my wet hair alone in my living room, I mutter, I hope I'm not sick again. This vacation was supposed to be a time to recharge my batteries and fix whatever cognitive dissonance I had with life and work, but I'm afraid I'm actually worse off than when I left. Still coming to from my surprise marathon nap, I place my feet on the floor and rotate my neck side to side. There's a loud thud at the base of my skull, and a jolt of pain shoots through my entire body, waking me up a bit more. Confused on how I ended up falling asleep on the couch, I frantically look around the room for clues before my eyes land on 3 empty pint glasses sitting on the coffee table in front of me. Ah, that's right. I had 3 Long Island iced teas today at 1 o'clock. I'm not sick at all. I'm just hungover. What was I thinking? I barely ate anything today. I only remember having half an everything bagel with cream cheese this morning. My almost broken toaster burnt the other half, so I put it on the squirrel feeder in my backyard. It was gone within minutes. I always forget about that feeder. It was a gift from Mrs. Anderson after we buried Mr. Anderson, who had a massive heart attack in his backyard during his granddaughter's 14th birthday party. She gave Ned and I both squirrel feeders after the service as a thank you for picking up her husband from their house in such a caring and compassionate manner. Those were her words written on a thank you card she sent with the package. It was a nice sentiment on her part. I guess Mr. Anderson made bird and squirrel feeders, so she probably didn't want to just throw them away after he died, but needed to make room in the basement for her treadmill or something. Ned's feeder is still in the box she brought it in, sitting below the time clock in the stairwell at the funeral home. I doubt I'll ever take it home. My stomach gurgles loudly in an angry, boozy fashion. Next to the pint glasses on the coffee table, there are 2 pink Powerball tickets and a half-eaten box of Butterfinger BBs tipped over on its side. Now, even more confused, I pick up one of the lottery tickets and squint to see that it was purchased at 5:26 p.m. today. I went to the gas station to buy lottery tickets and Butterfinger BBs, and I was drunk enough that I don't remember. Holy shit, I must have been a mess when I walked in. I had to have been slurring my words in a dramatic fashion because my Long Island iced teas are strong, obviously. I just hope I didn't make an ass out of myself or do something stupid like knock over a display and get banned for life. It wouldn't be the first time, but I like the layout of this gas station, and it's close. So I'm just gonna wait a few days before I go back there. There's nothing worse than alcohol amnesia fading away and the knot in your stomach feeling it produces when you start to remember all the poor decisions that led you to where you are in the current moment. A panicked feeling washes over me. God, I hope I didn't drive. I stand up quickly and walk over to the window to make sure my car is in one piece in my driveway. It is. Whew. The ground is wet. Apparently it rained again like it has all week. It's just misting now. The central heating kicks on with a loud bang and startles me. I see something move in my peripheral vision on the other side of the window. I turn my head and move closer to the window to investigate, bumping my nose against the wooden blinds. My fine motor skills aren't all that fantastic right now. I can feel my heart beating through my eyes. I exhale deeply, hoping it will relieve some of the pressure in my head. It doesn't. Through the haze the persistent drizzle has created, I see a person that appears to be an adult man standing in shadow near the edges of the orange glow from the loud halogen streetlights placed sporadically throughout my neighborhood. He can't be any further than 25 feet away from where I'm standing inside my house. I don't think he sees me though. At least I hope he can't. This is kinda creepy. What the hell is he doing, and why is he just standing in front of my house? In the rain, no less. He's gotta be freezing. I tell myself it's probably nothing, but if there's anything I've learned from years of watching TV and movies, it's that a man meandering in the shadows in front of your home ignoring the rain never ends with something cool or neat happening for the person watching through the window. In fact, it almost always ends in a homicide. I literally just watched a movie that started almost this exact way, so excuse me if I seem a little paranoid. Earlier this week, I rented The Strangers on DVD from Hollywood Video. It's a new release about a couple who's randomly terrorized and eventually murdered by 3 masked ne'er-do-wells in the middle of the night for virtually no reason. I watched it alone around 2 a.m. Wednesday morning, and I have to tell you, it was quite an experience. In terms of American psychological horror films, it has all the bells and whistles. I was constantly looking over my shoulder or pausing the DVD to investigate every unexplained sound coming from in or around my house. I even slept with the lights on that first night, which, as we all know, is the hallmark of an expertly crafted horror film. I've watched it 3 times since my initial viewing, and it's still sitting on top of my DVD player. I'm fairly certain it was only a 1-day rental since it just came out on Tuesday, so I'm going to get hammered with late fees. Totally worth it. The shadowy man steps a little closer to the streetlight. I can make out more details. Short hair, smaller frame, and hands in pockets. He stops before stepping directly in the light, pausing for a moment, swaying back and forth, just looking around. This is unsettling. I look over my shoulder to make sure there isn't someone standing behind me with an axe or a butcher knife in hand. There isn't. The man's bizarre behavior continues for another 40 seconds or so before the unknown figure takes a step forward into the light. I breathe a sigh of relief. It's just Steve, the guy that lives 2 doors down. Nothing to be afraid of here. He's total wallpaper. I've talked to Steve twice a week for 2 years, and I have no idea what he does, where he's from, or what he likes to do to cut loose, other than being a total weirdo loitering through the neighborhood at all hours of the night. He's about 5'6", $120, with an oddly shaped head and dresses how I imagine Bill Gates dresses on a pontooning trip or at a barbecue. Casual dorkwear. If Steve wasn't so wimpy and soft-spoken, I might have a little more fear for my life, but based on our interactions, I don't think Steve is capable of anything seriously dubious, like killing his neighbors on a whim. He might shoplift a pocket protector or a miniature tree for the train set village he probably has in his basement, but other than that, he's basically harmless. But so was Jeffrey Dahmer. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Steve is the exact type of wimpy, soft-spoken, hypothetical train set owner that would kill his neighbors. No one would ever expect it. It's the perfect crime. I quickly double-check the front door next to the window to make sure it's locked. We're good. Not tonight, Steve. Walking away from the window to restlessly pace around my living room in the dark to try and figure out what to do with myself, I take in the full scope of my headache. My head feels like it's about to split open from the top, like someone's driving the pointy side of an axe directly into my skull, but very, very slowly. Sorry, that may have been a little over the top, but the strangers have made axe murders top of mind this week. No pun intended there. I've never been to a home invasion, multiple murder scene on a death call before, and I can honestly tell you, that's a true disappointment. The closest I've come to anything like that was that fella who stabbed his family and lit himself on fire in his basement, but I was just a kid who lived with his parents when I went on that call, so I wasn't able to fully comprehend how scary that situation would have been for the wife and child, and how I would have reacted in that predicament. The strangers really made me think honestly about what I'd actually do if confronted with a home invasion homicide scenario. And realistically, if I were faced with a stranger-style attack, I'd either panic and hide in the closet, hoping the killers wouldn't find me, similar to what happened in the movie. Or alternatively, I could see myself going full Last House on the Left and becoming fully unhinged, hunting down and dismembering each one of the home invaders with things like weed whackers, drill bits, and various serrated cutlery, ultimately placing one of the home invaders' heads inside a doorless microwave while standing over them saying a cool movie catchphrase like, "I'm about to blow your mind," right before their brain explodes through their eye sockets, forcing me to repaint my ceiling. Can you tell I've spent some time thinking about this? Hopefully I never have to find out how I'd actually respond in that sort of crisis, but in the event it does happen, I truly hope I take the unhinged microwave route. But in all likelihood, I'd probably be killed almost immediately without any fanfare, leaving whoever's in the house with me to fend for themselves. It's a good thing I live alone now. I need a Tylenol. I walk to the kitchen and instinctually open the door to the refrigerator to be greeted by bright light and cool air flooding out. I squint from the brightness, but the cool air feels nice on my skin. I'm not even hungry, but if I were, I don't have anything to eat other than a jar of year-old pickles and a half-pound of salami I don't remember buying. That's right, I need to go to the store. Correction, I needed to go to the store 3 days ago, but just haven't gotten around to it. I shut the refrigerator door. Don't get me wrong, I may not have food in the fridge, but I've still been eating. Just not well. I've been working my way through the pantry to try and get rid of some of the old stuff. I'm pretty sure all I had to eat yesterday was a bowl of grape nuts mixed with a Yoplait yogurt that's been sitting in the back of my fridge for months, and a can of Bush's baked beans that I warmed up in the microwave. You could say I'm really living it up on vacation this week. I can't believe I fucked around this hard and wasted an entire week. How did it go by so fast? It's not like I was busy. Aside from the occasional 5 or 10 minute errand, I haven't left the house in 6 days. I've just been sitting in the dark, rotating from chair to sofa to bed to floor to chair. A thrilling vacation. When I requested this time off last month, I had big plans for this week. But like all the other plans I've made this year, they didn't quite shake out how I expected. You see, I took this week off because I was hired to play drums for the band Occasional Heroics on a 5-gig stint hitting all the big East Coast cities while their drummer dealt with some ongoing drama at home caused by his lifestyle. I heard through the grapevine he had gotten his second DUI right before I got the phone call gauging my interest. Naturally, I jumped at the opportunity. The band's music is okay. It's very of the moment, meaning their genre is somewhere between weird post-rock and ambient stoner shit. Think Tortoise or Mogwai, but less interesting. Nothing I'd ever listened to personally, but the drum parts are nasty and fun to play, so I can't really pretend like I wasn't excited to perform in some good-sized clubs supporting bands I'd actually listened to, and I'd get a week away from the tedium that is the funeral home. I had 4 weeks to prep, and as of last Thursday, I was ready. I was fully packed, waiting for the band to come pick me and my equipment up at my house when the phone rang. It was the band's manager calling to tell me that the band had decided to go with a less talented drummer for these dates who was charging them a much cheaper day rate. What a kick in the mouth, right? The manager actually said, "This guy isn't as good as you, but he's charging us a hell of a lot less," hoping I would change my rate and decide to donate my services to the band. Fuck that noise. I don't learn all your music and haul all my shit around for free. And opting out of their agreement the way they did was dirty. So I hope their van and trailer end up at the bottom of the Hudson River. Once I unpacked and my anger subsided, I actually told myself a week of doing nothing is exactly what I needed. 7 full, uninterrupted days of me time. No dead bodies, no visitations, and most importantly, no late-night phone calls from Ned, allowing me to rest and recalibrate. But obviously that didn't happen. I went a little too hard in the paint with the drinking, and am more anxious and uncalibrated than I've ever been. I don't want to do what I've been doing anymore. Any of it. I want to go somewhere new and be someone else. Not just that guy that works at a funeral home who occasionally plays drums inappropriately loud at restaurant gigs while diners ignore me eating their $14 steaks. I think the first step of fixing my life is slowing down on my alcohol consumption, but that's proving far more difficult than I had anticipated since I've been relying on it so heavily to calm my nerves and elevate my mood after work. I gave up the whole Tootsie Pops instead of booze plan when I stepped on a scale a month and a half ago and realized I had gained 10 pounds. Needless to say, my vanity didn't allow me to continue down that path. I believe my exact thought while looking down at the inflated numbers on the scale was, I'd rather destroy and poison my insides with alcohol than be forced to walk around with a spare tire from eating fucking suckers all day and all night. The extra weight fell off almost immediately when I stopped eating all that sugar. But the drinking has increased to a level which I would classify with no healthcare education or training as problematic, if not potentially alarming. Headache pounding, I pulled the top off the bottle of Tylenol I pulled from the medicine basket next to the fridge without looking, grabbed 2 pills with my fingers and popped them into my mouth. I reopened the refrigerator to grab a soda to wash the pills down and realized the only beverages available are a gallon jug of iced tea I made 3 weeks ago and the last Budweiser Select of an 18-pack I purchased on Wednesday. Squinting again to dim the bright light coming from the fridge that seemed to elevate my headache to migraine status, and understanding my current condition is caused by alcohol, I make the only reasonable decision and grab the Budweiser Select. Hair of the dog, I tell myself, twisting the cap off before taking a large gulp, feeling the Tylenol capsule slide down my throat. I put the cap back on the Tylenol sitting on my counter and realized I had grabbed the wrong bottle. It was Tylenol PM. Ugh. I look at the clock, 7:23. Well, worse things have happened this week. At least I'll get to bed early. I walk my beer into the living room and sit down in a well-worn divot on my brownish-gray fabric couch. Aside from 2 dimly lit nightlights, the room is completely dark. I drink the rest of my beer in one drink and set the empty bottle next to the pint glasses and the Butterfinger BBs on the coffee table. Don't mind if I do, I say to myself, picking up the box of Butterfingers. I stick my nose in the opening to smell the container, and the peanut butter and chocolate smell makes me gag, so I place the box back where I found it. For the first time in almost a week, I see my phone light up from across the room, sitting on an end table on its charger. It's on silent, but since the room is so dark, the 2-inch color LED screen lighting up is hard to miss. I watch it ring, debating whether or not to be bothered by whoever's on the other end of the call. I'm immediately anxious, thinking of an excuse to have queued up to get out of whatever this is. I walk over to the phone and look at the caller ID. It's Jenifer. Remember her? The girl that caught me with my shoes off, who I thought was flirting with me the day she came in to interview? Well, she's my coworker now. And for the record, there has been zero flirting on either of our parts, leading me to believe our initial interaction was just her being friendly and nervous on the day of her big interview. And even if she was flirting, my dad would not be stoked to find out there was any fraternizing among his employees. So I've been Johnny Professional, and as my dad would say, keeping it in my pants. Other than the normal pleasantries and general work stuff, Jenifer and I have barely talked. We're both just too busy doing whatever it is we need to do on any given day to sit down and chat about anything, really. Alan and her are teamed up for removals, so I have no idea how she is on death calls or dealing with families, but from Alan's account, she's detail-oriented and good at her job. Why would she be calling me? She knows I'm off till Monday. Everyone knows I'm off till Monday because they're all forced to cover for me. A thought pops into my head. Maybe she's calling to ask me out. Intrigued now and less anxious, I pick up my phone. The screen goes dark. I miss the call. Staring at the phone for a moment, debating calling Jenifer back, the LED screen lights up. It's her again. Feeling that beer kick in and getting some relief from my headache, I flip my phone open and answer. Hello? Hey Grant, it's Jenifer. Hey, what's going on? Not much. I need a favor. Why is Jenifer calling me for a favor? Okay, I say, interested but pensive. She makes her pitch. So Ned and Alan are 4 counties away on a cremation call, and we just got a sheriff's call in High Rise Park down the street from the funeral home. So the answering service called me as a backup, and I figured I'd see if you were home and could help me out. Damn. I am home, but I just took Tylenol PM and was about ready to go to bed, I start to say before being interrupted. Oh, well, I'll see if I can get somebody else. Sorry to bother you, Grant. She sounds disappointed. There's a pregnant pause on the phone line before I break the silence and say, you know what? Fuck it. I'll go. I may be dozing off on you, but you're in a pinch, so I gotcha. Awesome. I owe you big time, Jenifer responds excitedly. You know, I'm on the east side with the van right now, so I can come pick you up. Those 6 words make me anxious in most cases because it almost inevitably means I'm going to end up being held hostage by whoever's driving. But for some reason, I didn't even think before responding. That works for me. Jenifer tells me she'll see me in 15 minutes, and we get off the phone. Feeling the rush of suddenly having something to do for the first time in a week, I take a 2-minute shower before walking into my closet to see my only black suit that isn't at the dry cleaners wadded up and thrown into the corner of my closet. Fuck. Of course. Roughly 20 minutes later, after steaming my suit and getting dressed, I hear 2 quick beeps of a car horn. She's here. I grab the stranger's DVD, knowing we'll pass the video store on the way to or from the funeral home, and figure I'll save myself a trip. I go out the front door, locking it behind me, being sure to double check it 3 times before I walk away. Note, my OCD won't allow me to walk away from any door until I turn the handle 3 times. It's a pain. As I turn and begin walking, I feel a wave of sleepiness wash over me. I feel it mostly in or around my eyes. It's been about 25 minutes since I took the Tylenol PM, but it's mixing with the beer nicely, so even though I'm a bit sleepy, I actually feel pretty good. It's raining more steadily now. It's much colder than I thought it would be tonight. I suppose I should have worn my trench coat, but I wasn't really thinking about the weather when I got dressed, and I really don't want to run inside, so it looks like we're getting wet tonight. In a strictly professional manner, of course. Now that I'm acclimated to the outside world, the cold rain and breeze feel refreshing and add a little extra pep in my step. I look around to see if my neighbor Steve is still outside being a weirdo. He's not outside, but I'm sure wherever he is, he's probably still being a weirdo. I walk around the front of the van, smiling and waving at Jenifer before grabbing the passenger door handle. A giant gust of wind pushing against the van adds resistance as I open the door, and my whole face contorts as I let out a giant yawn before saying hello. Hey, Jenifer. Oh my God, you look so tired, she says. Thank you so much for doing this. Mildly insulted by her observation, I laugh and say, yeah, no problem. What you got there, she asks. I hold up the DVD case and say, I rented The Strangers and need to return it. You think we can pop by the video store? Of course. We can stop on our way back. Is that movie good? I really want to see it. Yeah, it's pretty great. Jenifer reaches behind her and pulls out a brown paper bag while I'm closing my door and fastening my seatbelt. She holds it up and says, I'm a couple minutes late because I stopped to get you a thank you present for bailing me out. Oh, you didn't have to give me anything, I say as I take the thank you gift and pull it out of the bag. It's a glass-handled bottle of Smirnoff vodka. Oh, shit, thank you, I say, surprised. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You're on vacation. Plus, I heard somewhere that you like to party, she says, putting the car in reverse and pulling out of my driveway. I yawn again, loudly, and apologize. Don't apologize, Jenifer says. You took sleep aid, for God's sakes. How about we stop by the gas station and get a couple Red Bulls? Yes, I say without hesitation, but do you mind if we go to a gas station a little closer to the funeral home? She flips on the turn signal to pull out of my neighborhood and says, why? Don't they carry Red Bull? I laugh and decide to tell her the truth. They do carry Red Bull. I just don't really want to go back there tonight. Oh, you were just there? She asked, glancing over at me. Yeah, well, believe it or not, I blacked out a few hours ago and ended up walking over and may or may not have caused a scene. It's a whole thing. I just don't want to have to talk to the same cashier and feel judged right now. Jenifer nods and smiles. We'll hit 7-Eleven on Adams. We're on our way now. Feeling the Red Bull I chugged on my way to the park kicking in, I'm no longer tired and my headache is virtually non-existent. Was I hungover or just under-caffeinated? Honestly, I think I'm just excited not to be alone anymore. I took for granted how 6 days of isolation would make me feel. Jenifer's pretty good company on a death call. She's fun, easy to talk to, and her laugh is contagious. Her only downfall is her atrocious taste in music. She listened to a mix CD she made of Simple Plan songs the entire way to the call, which would be cool if we were both 13, but all things considered, her music taste didn't ruin the ride at all. It's actually pretty charming that she's obsessed with such a terrible band. Jenifer pulls into the entrance to the park and drives towards the band shell. It's pouring now, and I'm really regretting not bringing a raincoat. But Jenifer doesn't appear to have a jacket either, so I don't feel so bad about it since we're both in this together. An officer with an umbrella and a weird condom over his hat waves us over with a flashlight and points out where to park. Jenifer and I get out of the car, and the officer walks to a tree and stands under its huge, half-filled branches as a makeshift shelter from the elements. We quickly pull the cot out of the car and speed walk over to the officer, both muttering to ourselves about how cold and wet it is out. "Hey guys, beautiful night, huh?" the officer says with a smile before telling us why we're here. "We got a 19-year-old female Jane Doe drug overdose this evening. We don't know who she is yet, so you're just going to take her to the hospital morgue until we figure out who she is and where she's going. She's out there," the officer says, pointing to the large grass mall between the bandshell and clubhouse. I can faintly make out a mass laying on the ground, but it's too dark to see clearly. Jenifer and I walk the cot out, rolling it under the police tape. The rain has let up a bit in the minutes since we got here, but it's still soaking us with every step. I watch the raindrops beat up and roll off the scotch-guarded cot cover as it bounces through the grass. We pull up and park the cot next to a body fully exposed to the elements in the field. The officer is holding his flashlight above his head and points it at the body, revealing a petite blonde woman wearing sweatpants, a plain black t-shirt, and low-top Doc Martens. She appears to be laying on a jacket or a hooded sweatshirt of some sort. It's weird that they didn't cover up her body with a sheet and just left her out here in the rain like this. But no one hangs out in the park on cold, rainy nights like this, so I guess they didn't really see a need to conceal the body. Jenifer and I drop the cot to its lowest position, and she unzips the cover and pulls out a disaster pouch. I squat down next to the girl to take a closer look at the body laying on its back in front of me, ignoring the downpour for a moment. Poor girl, I think to myself. Life was just getting started for her, and somehow, someway, she made a series of poor decisions that led her to where she is now, dead. Was it heroin? I asked the officer. Yeah, she had a whole bag of paraphernalia with her when the park supervisor found her a few hours ago. I look at the woman's arms, and as I suspected, there's track marks everywhere. She must have been left-handed because her right arm appears to have way more tiny holes and dark bruising. We've seen a real uptick in ODs at the funeral home lately. It's sad, and it affects every demographic. It's not just young folks taking a ride on the white horse anymore. It's everyone. And it's not just scary illegal drugs. More often than not, it's the safe prescription drugs that are killing these people. Thankfully, opiates make me itch, so I've never really been all that interested in experimenting with them. Which is probably a good thing, because from what I know about myself and my inability to moderately partake in anything I enjoy, if I tried heroin, I'd probably end up just like our Jane Doe here. I take a look at her face, which has virtually no color, and one of her eyelids is slightly open. Her skin is smattered with pockmarks and sores, perhaps from bad acne, but it's far more likely it's from the heroin or whatever else she was doing. The woman's long hair is pulled back into a ponytail, and it appears to be tucked into her t-shirt. Jenifer taps me on the shoulder and says, "Gloves?" I look up at her and say no, shaking my head, only because I know how hard it is to put on wet gloves with wet hands. So I'd rather just bypass that dog and pony show. There's no blood, so I think we're good without gloves on this one, I say, smiling at Jenifer. She puts the 4 gloves she got out in her pocket. The officer's flashlight is casting an interesting shadow on Jenifer's face from this angle. From my perspective, Jenifer's wet hair laying flat on her head and runny eye makeup kind of makes her look like Neve Campbell from the Wild Things movie poster. Jenifer puts the unfolded and unzipped disaster pouch next to the girl's body, and we proceed to move her into the bag. She's so light and frail. As I zip up the disaster pouch around her head, I take one last look at her face and think, what a waste. She could have been anything. I wonder if she knew she had a problem. Didn't she have any friends, or were they all junkie enablers too? It makes me sad to know that a substance can do this to someone, destroying a young life before it's even started. Why on earth would you do this to yourself? My compassion for this girl turns into judgment, and I think about Everclear's song Heroin Girl and its last lyric. I heard the policeman say, "Just another overdose." It's like that song was written specifically for this occasion. That's all this girl will ever be to us and the officer, just another overdose. I finish zipping the disaster pouch up around her head, and I realize my thoughts and judgments are completely hypocritical because I've been on an alcohol bender for the better part of a year now. But I shake the negative thoughts out of my head, lying to myself, repeating the mantra, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. Jenifer and I fasten the body to the cot and flip over and zip up its cover. We squat on either end of the cot and I pull the release lever as we stand to extend and lock out the legs in place. I push on one of the wheels with my foot to make sure the legs are locked. It clicks. We're good. Note, it's always important to check and make sure the legs are locked when moving a loaded or unloaded cot, especially on uneven surfaces like grass. If you don't, and they're not, the cot will collapse, making a huge ruckus, and will cause you much embarrassment in front of a family and your coworkers. Turning toward the van and grabbing the foot end of the cot, I accidentally put my hand on the release lever without knowing, and pull. Instantaneously, the accordion legs of the cot collapse to the lowest position, making the cot under the weight of Jane Doe's body hit the ground with a loud thud and bounce, almost tipping over. Jenifer and the officer laugh loudly while I'm panicking to make sure I didn't just accidentally hurt Jenifer's hand or arm. Thankfully, I didn't. What a dumb rookie move. I haven't ever collapsed a loaded cot publicly before. I've seen it happen a few times, and it's always scary in the moment, but is immediately hilarious once you're allowed to laugh about it. Alan dropped the stretcher on a house call one time, and it may have been the funniest thing I've ever seen, but couldn't laugh at because the family was standing right in front of us. I'll tell you what, they found nothing funny about that loud crash after a peaceful removal. We weren't even out of the house yet, and we already made a terrible impression. But it was totally worth it when I was able to belly laugh at Alan's expense all the way back to the funeral home. Thankfully, tonight, the cot didn't tip over. That would have been bad in this weather. I can feel my face flush with embarrassment as we pick the cot back up and extend its legs. I double check it with my foot once again. We're locked. Jenifer is still laughing uncontrollably. The contagiousness of her laugh makes me giggle a bit before saying, "Oh, fuck off, Jenifer." I grab the stretcher again to move it forward, making sure this time not to touch the release lever. We loaded the stretcher into the van, drove away, and dropped Jane Doe at the hospital without any further incident. We're headed back to the funeral home now. Jenifer and I arrive back at the funeral home having to redress the cot. We're both soaking wet and make our way to the prep room via the elevator to restock the cot with fresh sheets and rubber gloves. Ned and Alan's cars weren't in the parking lot. They must have made pretty good time on their out-of-county removal. They're probably already at home in bed. I'm a little jealous, but I've woken up quite a bit from the cold rain and Red Bull and could imagine myself staying up at least another hour, maybe 2 when I get home. All I can think about is getting out of these wet clothes. I can feel the starch or whatever the dry cleaner uses to press my shirt soaking through and making my skin feel slimy and disgusting. As Jenifer redresses the cot, I slip into the walk-in closet attached to the prep room, closing the door behind me to put on a pair of running shorts, an oversized crewneck sweatshirt, and a pair of Sambas with no socks that I had left at the funeral home for yard work. I walk back out to the prep room, not mentioning my outfit change to Jenifer. When she sees me, she says, "Yes, good thinking. I totally forgot I brought extra clothes here too. Will you finish this up so I can change?" "Of course," I say. She takes off her soaked pantsuit jacket as she enters the closet, leaving the door open behind her so she can continue our conversation. From my vantage point, I can't see anything but the door. Don't worry, I wasn't trying to be a creep. She's my coworker. Speaking of creeps, I wonder what my neighbor Steve is doing right now. He's either at home playing with his trains or he's broken into my house and is waiting to ambush me after I fall asleep this evening. I zip the cot cover up and place a handful of extra gloves in its front pouch. Jenifer asks loudly from the closet, "Can you grab me a towel? My hair is so wet." Thinking nothing of the request, I walk over to one of the cabinets and grab a large white towel and walk it over to the closet, announcing my presence as I approach so she doesn't think I'm trying to sneak a peek or something. "Okay, bringing it in now." "Thanks, Grant. Just put it on the shelf." Breaking the threshold of the closet, I see Jenifer standing with her back toward me. She's standing there shirtless with her pants and shoes still on, wringing her hair out on the carpet. I'm surprised by what I see, but not by what you think. Sure, I never would have imagined that Jenifer would be so comfortable changing in front of her coworker, but what absolutely blew my mind was the full-size back tattoo that Jenifer has of a dream catcher running from her shoulder blades to her butt. Oh my god, I think to myself, what an ugly tattoo. I keep that thought to myself and say, "Here you go, putting the towel on the shelf next to her before scurrying out. Don't ask me about my tattoo, she says. It's stupid and way too big. Oh no, it's cool, I say, my voice getting higher as I respond while pushing the cot out of the operating room, hoping she can't tell that I agree with her. A moment or two later, Jenifer steps out of the closet wearing yoga pants, flip-flops, and a faded Simple Plan t-shirt. I can't contain myself when I see her. Laughing loudly, I say, "You like Simple Plan enough to own a t-shirt?" She smiles and tells me to shut up. In a Patrick Bateman moment, I suddenly remember I need to return the copy of The Strangers on DVD sitting in the front seat of the van to Hollywood Video when Jenifer takes me home, and I remind her of that. That's right, I forgot you have that. Do you want to watch it again? She asks. Like, right now? I say, confused by the question, looking at the clock in the operating room. It's 9 p.m. now. Yeah, we can watch it in the chapel on the big projector. You know, I've never thought to do that, but yes, saying enthusiastically, thinking about how much scarier the strangers would be inside an empty funeral chapel. Cool, go put the cot back in the van and grab it. I'll turn the lights on in the chapel. As I walk away, Jenifer adds, grab that bottle of vodka too. We should have a cocktail. About 7 minutes later, Jenifer and I are sitting in the dark on two large wingback chairs with our feet up on a casket beer watching the opening scene of The Strangers on the wall at the front of the chapel. I raided the basement fridge for Diet Pepsi and made cocktails in two large coffee tumblers I found under the sink in the break room. I don't think my dad would approve of this, but fuck it. I'm on vacation and I'm sure he's asleep and none the wiser, so I don't have to worry about him or anyone else for that matter crashing our makeshift screening. 50 minutes and 3 drinks each later, I'm drunk and honestly pretty freaked out. Even though I know all the beats from seeing this movie 4 other times this week, it's still scary. Jenifer hasn't said a word in about 20 minutes. I glance over, her eyes are glued to the screen. She's terrified. I stand up and tell Jenifer I need to use the boys' room. I set my drink on the casket beer and make my way to the restroom. While standing at the urinal, I think to myself, wow, after 6 days of being utterly alone with nothing to do, it feels nice to have a new friend. Someone to hang out with that I'm not trying to sleep with. Because we're coworkers and we respect each other's professional boundaries enough to not be inappropriate. I smile at myself in the mirror after splashing water on my face, realizing how drunk I am. I think I can have another drink, I think to myself before moving to the door quickly, excited to see the end of the movie again. It's my favorite part. Just thinking of the line, "because you were home," sends shivers down my spine. As I drunkenly shuffle around the corner and enter the hallway leading to the chapel, I see a shadow figure that startles me standing in the threshold where the chapel and the hallway meet. I jump and feel my heart skip a beat. This is it. It's time. I'm being funeral home invaded. For a moment, my adrenaline spikes and I feel myself slip into fight mode. Hello? Who's there? I say timidly, standing still as stone in the hallway. The shadow figure moves towards me and says, Grant, it's me. I got scared and didn't want to be alone. Oh my God, you scared the shit out of me, I say, giggling and slightly out of breath. Jenifer walks towards me, and before I have time to process what's happening, she puts her hand on my face, moving closer to me, and our lips touch. What the fuck is happening, I think to myself, leaning into the kiss. Now, it would be ungentlemanly of me to elaborate any further on what happened next, but I certainly don't want to imply anything more happened than it did, because as flawed as I may be, I'm not really the kiss and tell type. But if I were into tasteful sharing and felt so inclined to use baseball terms to describe what happened that night, I would say the evening was spent mostly on first base, but we might have snuck in a double on the green leather couch in the lobby. But again, I'm a gentleman and a consummate professional, so I would never share something like that. All I know is Ned and I have had a lot of crazy nights on call, but nothing like this. Don't worry, we finished the movie. And I only owed $17 in late fees. Totally worth it. Monday, 12:15 p.m. It's my first day back from vacation, and it's slow. No services, no visitations. A perfect way to ease back into work. I was a little worried that it was going to be awkward between Jenifer and I this morning, but it wasn't at all. In fact, when Jenifer came in today, she made it a point to tell me she had a really nice time on Friday night. With a wink. So, I guess she was flirting that day she came in for her interview. Who knows? The whole making out with a coworker thing felt wrong, but Jenifer didn't seem to be bothered in the slightest by it, so I figured I wouldn't be either. Ned, Jenifer, and I are the only ones here at the moment. Everyone else is out to lunch. They're both upstairs deep cleaning the prep room while I'm getting ready to shampoo the back porch carpets before closing it down for the winter. The back doorbell rings. I drop what I'm doing and briskly move to the lobby. Standing there waiting for me is a slender, handsome-looking, dark-haired man in his early to mid-20s. He smiles when we make eye contact and I say, "Hi, how can I help you?" The man smiles back at me and says, "Hey, is Jenifer around? Hang tight, let me intercom her." "Jenifer, to the lobby, please. Jenifer, to the lobby." Knowing it will take a minute or two for Jenifer to come down, I ask the gentleman if he wants a bottle of water or anything. He politely declines and has a seat on the green leather couch in the lobby. The green leather couch. We talk about how crummy the weather has been for the last couple days before hearing the sound of heels walking quickly down the stairwell. The door opens and Jenifer pops out and says, "Hey guys." The man stands up when he sees Jenifer. She looks at me like a deer in the headlights, as if sending me a message telepathically. What's that look for? I think to myself. "Grant, I want you to meet my boyfriend, Andre." Almost unable to speak, I raise my hand to shake his. I'm in shock, but I don't let it faze me. Just like being sick at a visitation, I feign interest and excitement. The show must go on, right? So I overcorrect, and with too much enthusiasm say, "Oh, so you're the Andre I've heard so much about. Pleasure to meet you. We all love having your girlfriend around the office." Andre smiles and says, "Good to meet you too, man. I've heard a lot about you." "Oh, I bet you haven't," I think to myself. Andre kisses Jenifer on the lips and says, "Want to go to lunch?" She smiles and says yes, quickly grabbing her purse and walking down the ramp to the exit door. Before she steps out, she looks back and we make eye contact for a brief second. She mouths the words, "I'm sorry," to me before walking out, letting the door shut behind her. Standing alone in the lobby, I look up at the chandelier above my head. There's a cobweb dangling down from one of the light bulb covers. I try to reach up and grab it, but it's too high. Defeated, I sit down on the green leather couch. I'm not sure how to feel right now. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did and you like the podcast, please rate and review wherever you listen and consider telling a friend. The podcast keeps growing every day and I couldn't be happier. If you'd like to support My Funeral Home Stories directly, head over to myfuneralhomestories.com and get Collection 1 or the Epilogue episode. They're commercial free and all the money goes directly to me, which fucking rules. And if you're interested, check out my other podcast, How to Become a Terrible Person. It's incredibly different than this podcast. It's hosted by my beautiful fiance and I, and most of the people that listen to this podcast that try it out, well, they don't like it, but maybe you will. Anyway, the next chapter of My Funeral Home Stories will be a premium-only podcast, and it will drop on November 17th of 2023. More to come on that later. Thanks for listening.